The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Since many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as those who were eyewitnesses from the beginning and ministers of the word have handed them down to us, I too have decided, after investigating everything accurately anew, to write it down in an orderly sequence for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may realize the certainty of the teachings you have received. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news of him spread throughout the whole region. He taught in their synagogues and was praised by all. He came to Nazareth, where he had grown up, and went, according to his custom, into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. He stood up to read and was handed a scroll of the prophet Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the passage where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord." Rolling up the scroll, he handed it back to the attendant and sat down, and all the eyes of the synagogue looked intently at him. He said to them, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I was wondering, in light of the gospel, how one can preach on those words proclaimed by Christ from the prophet Isaiah without offending someone. In fact, the people of the synagogue will reject Jesus and attempt, right after he proclaimed this, to throw him off a cliff and to kill him. Words have that power to drive people to profound good or profound evil. If Jesus were to reincarnate now, not going to happen, once was enough for anybody paying attention, but if he were, and if he was handed that same scroll and he read it to the nation live on all media, would he find Christians resistant to his words or accepting of his words? Or be offended that Jesus would be on the side of the oppressed? You know, in Bishop Oscar Romero's time in Honduras before he was murdered, there were Catholics in power who resisted his preaching on the poor, which brought many of them to believe his martyrdom was reasonable if he had only respected the powers that be. Well, I will not. I will respect the power of Christ. This passage from the prophet Isaiah, which Jesus proclaimed and all Christians accept, is incorrectly quoted in Luke's gospel. And for the people in the synagogue hearing it, they would have known that Jesus left out something that for them was very important, a key part of Isaiah's message, which may be why they reacted so violently. Let me read you the full quote. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord, and a day of vengeance of our God." That's the full quote. He ends it with vengeance, the vengeance of God. That may be why they were looking at him so intently, because they wanted Jesus to get to what for them was the best part. Get to the best part, the vengeance. In some texts, it's interpreted as vindication, but it's clear that the people there seeking to throw him off a cliff were only looking for vengeance. Instead of hearing the word they wanted, Jesus tells them the words they didn't want. He stands for justice, for the poor, freedom for the oppressed. And even if it is fellow Christians doing the oppressing, we stand against that. Opening the eyes of the blind. We seek to heal. Vengeance will have no part to play, human or divine, in the new covenant, period. I did a word search. I like to go to BibleGateway.com. It's a great website. You can search the Bible with all sorts of tools. So I plugged in vengeance. And vengeance came up in the Old Testament 34, 40 times, something like that. In the New Testament, 0. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Our Archbishop John Wester stands alongside the oppressed with Jesus, as we all do. He put out a press release this week in light of events that are happening. You can find the full statement on the Archdiocese of Santa Fe website. He writes this: in light of recent news, I feel a profound obligation to speak on behalf of immigrants. The United States owes much to immigrants since they first came to our shores as they beheld the Statue of Liberty. Addressing our broken immigration system is a complex and formidable challenge that has perplexed our nation for decades. Unfortunately, many leaders propose overly simplistic solutions, either tending toward open borders or sealing them shut. Neither approach is viable. We need comprehensive, insightful, and effective immigration reform. Immigrants are a benefit to our nation. They are not criminals. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were refugees in Egypt. Archbishop goes on. As Catholics, we firmly believe that all human beings are children of God. Brothers and sisters created in God's image, it is imperative that we reassess how we treat our fellow humans, both within our borders and beyond. Please join me in praying that our country responds to the current immigration crisis in a manner that reflects gospel values by managing our borders wisely, and at the same time providing for those who are looking for a home where they can find life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So writes John Wester, Archbishop of Santa Fe.